So remind me why buying this place seemed like such a good idea at the time.
Yeah, it's harder and harder to remember exactly the reasons for that.
I still find it amusing you're doing this in your bathrobe.
You find that amusing, do you? You are amused by me.
We are amused.
You are amused. Am I not amusing?
Not exactly the reference I was making, but we'll go with it.
We'll go with it. We ready?
Yes.
They are. They're heavy duty.
Mm-hmm.
One more. The boiler is officially disconnected.
Yay! Disassemble!
Disassemble. Okay. What I'm doing now is angling it so I can empty it down into the drain.
Mm.
So, it may be a low pressure range, but I'm hoping to keep this under 30 psi anyway, so this will be a useful little gauge that I can connect on somewhere into the system where I want to know what the pressure is. So,
Well, I'm glad you understand it.
it's a pressure gauge.
Okay. I'm glad that means something to you, my darling.
Yes. So this is the first of the balancing valves for the zones. We don't really have zones here in the modern sense. What we have is we have the east side of the house and we have the west side of the house, just because of how this was piped. So we're going to have all those individual manual valves on all the radiators to be able to adjust each room. But if we need to adjust the balance from one whole side of the house to the other, we're just going to be able to do that by setting one of these valves part way closed. And that way we end up with an ability to set things in terms of how the water circulates in one side of the house versus the other. So these are going to be our balancing valves. One set for one side, one set for the other, and that way we can just adjust the whole thing. There's our new expansion tank, a diaphragm version, with our air separator on top. This is going to be where the water feed connects in down here at the bottom. So we're going to have that connected in the long run. In the meantime, though, I'm going to connect this directly to some of these pipes so that I can flush the whole system out before I connect the boiler. So that's going to be one of my next steps today, is to be able to use this to just push water through the whole system and clean out all the junk.
Which,
apparently I meant to leave it running for 20 minutes or so.
yes, and the incompetent imbecile who we had hired to work on this system, who installed the wrong boiler, did not flush things.
Correct.
Which was
suboptimal.
You could say that.
Yes.
Let's show them.
Yes. So, I don't know if you can see down here, but if you look down this big pipe on the steam boiler,
The wrong boiler.
boiler, you'll see that it is entirely silted up with junk. Gunge. I don't know what you want to call that. It's disgusting particles of rust and grime and corrosion and metal fragments and...
Give me the light. There we go. See, that's filled up with junk to within a couple inches of the top of the boiler. And it's really not supposed to work that way.
No, it's not. It is not meant to work that way, and it did not work that way. And all of that came out of the old system. Wow. No fun. So, I get to make it better here for the new system. This was what I rigged up to to flush the system. Watch out, I was telling her it looks like Mr. Octopus had an accident in here. Here's Mr. Octopus, which looks like a gigantic mess of pecs. But
you are going to do something with this, aren't you?
yes, this is not the eventual plan. This is simply an ad hoc connection that bypasses a lot of the stuff that's going to be connected to the boiler and just fed water straight into the system in order to flush everything. I still hear it draining over there. Yes. But yes, no, this is not the eventual plan of how it looks. The plan here is that I'm going to cut this right here, connect this into there where it belongs, cut these at this T here, and then these will be routed into a nicely plumbed thing over here on the wall. So it will look better, but right now it was just basically a way of getting water into the system without trying to run it through components that I haven't closed off yet. So,
and explain again why you had to get water into the system before we have a boiler?
So basically, before we have a boiler in there to get messed up by all the junk that's still floating around in the system, like the junk that got in this one.
Installed by the guy who didn't know what he was doing and installed
Correct.
It without flushing the system.
So basically, I just ran water through there at regular water pressure for, 10, 15 minutes until the water was running clear. And so it did bring out some stuff, but to be honest, most of the junk that was in this system is now in this boiler. Which, it did serve a function. That function, however, was not really providing heat. It was absorbing junk and burning propane.
A boiler is not a filter.
No, correct. This boiler, however, functioned as a filter.
That was not what it was intended for.
It was not. But the good news is there is not so much junk left in our system as there was, which is good. So that means that there's less junk to clog up our new fancy boiler, and that basically any remaining junk is hopefully in there plugging leaks, doing what it's meant to do. So, and the good news is none of the areas that I soldered together yesterday leaked. So that means that I did a good job. And I may have used more solder than technically necessary, but that's okay.
Better too much than too little.
Some ended up on my shoes and my pants.
Yeah, but they just look like 80s girl sparkle stuff now.
Sparklies. See the sparklies on my shoes? Yes.
Sparkle shoes. I would have loved that when I was a girl in the 80s.
Yes. Well, in this case, they're hard-working guys' shoes.
Sparkly, hard-working guys' shoes.
Okay, fine.
Then we can get you a pet unicorn.
And some rainbows.
Hey! Rainbow Bright was awesome.
Rainbow Bright was pretty awesome. But next thing I have to do is redo some of the gas piping, now that I have water that can dry up while I'm doing that. So that means I go outside and turn off the gas for now, so I can take that apart. So this is what I was working on yesterday, which is basically the bunch of copper piping that's going to be involved around the boiler, what they call the near boiler piping. This is the primary secondary setup for the bottom of the boiler.
In English, darling?
So this basically creates two loops. There's one little loop that is the boiler itself, and then there's going to be the bigger loop that goes around to the radiators, hence the primary, secondary. And so these had to be a very specific spacing apart, and these had to be able to screw into the boiler where everything comes off, and none of this has any flexibility once it's all soldered together. So it all had to be very precisely set up.
Wait, back up, back up, back up. Explain the fact that you made this from scratch.
Ah, yes. So all of this is just made from sections of copper pipe that I had to cut up, and various junctions and curves and such, and solder it all in place, and then fit in the valves where they belonged, and these threaded unions where they belong, and
as one does, just offhand.
Solder it all together with basically this stuff.
Which is
95% tin and 5% antimony, lead-free solder. Not that I really need lead-free in this case, but why not? And then basically clean up all the cut copper pieces and cover them with flux, and then
What's
solder them
flux?
together. Flux is basically a chemical that makes the solder stick better to the copper and prevents corrosion and oxidation from happening with the torch, which is, I'm using this because I don't have my good torch with me. So all this is a camping propane canister with a little basic torch on it. It's not the world's most controllable torch, but it has worked, which has been nice. And then set everything up. There's the flanges on some of the copper, which are going to connect to this pump.
Explain what a flange is.
A flange is one of these things that allows you to bolt to the end of the pipes. So right here you can see we've got a flange on the end of that, which is going to then bolt to the pump this way.
Now this is another piece which you created from scratch.
Well, the flange I bought, but then I had to solder it into the rest of the system there.
The rest of the system being another piece you created from scratch.
Yes. That one has a mount on it which is going to have a gauge on it so we can read the pressure inside the pipe and the temperature inside the pipe and all of that. There's lots of different pieces to this whole system, and so yeah, it's a big project.
So you did all this from scratch.
Yes.
With elementary tools.
With fairly elementary tools, yes.
So I have a question.
Yes.
Superman was from Krypton. What planet are you from, and how did I wind up married to you?
The planet of unschoolers. The wild and untamed planet of unschoolers.
How did you pick me to marry? Out of all the possible girls on Earth.
There are very few Gibson girls left.
Aw, I love you.
I love you. So,
Boiler is now on the wall.
boiler is on the wall, which is a very good start here.
Thanks to some Gabriel and some help from our neighbor.
Yes. There we go. And I'm getting the bottom of it mounted with this bracket now, which hopefully will make it even more secure. So yeah, so all of this stuff here is all just carefully measured and built by me. With
From scratch.
Yes, with a bunch of different important goals and considerations. So I have to have enough shut-off valves to be able to isolate different parts of this. I have to be able to have these unions to be able to disconnect it from the boiler when necessary. I have to have the air separator in the right relationship to the tank, in the right relationship to the pump, and I have to have this magnetic dirt separator in the right place.
Hang on, explain what you started with.
I started with a bunch of pipes.
Just the pipes.
And a few bends and a number of components like the valves and the dirt separator and things like that.
So you started with just the pipes and you went to that.
This. So I've got a couple more pieces to connect onto it that need a little bit more assembly. This over here is going to be the feed assembly that goes to the radiators, basically, in the long run. And then this over here is going to be the assembly for the return, where the returns come back from the radiators.
And you made these as well.
And I made these as well. And, you know, there's...
I love how I have to prompt you to explain this.
Yes, well, there's...